Hi again, folks. Welcome back. Life with Breath Expert Series. Ed Harold here with you today. And today we have the amazing Larissa Carlson. And if she doesn't know it, you don't need to know it. It's simply that simple. When I met this young lady several years ago, many years ago, I just knew that you ever meet someone and you get around their energy and you're like, wow, like that is really something. Like she's dynamite and she's going to be able to help a lot of people. And since then, her career has been like a moonshot, just really taking off. And she's in that 1% of the 1% of the teachers who you want to work with. And she's an Ayurvedic master. She's a yogic master. She's one of the all-time greats. And she's what I call the prana goddess. And where there's prana, you're going to find Larissa, and she is a large charge of prana. Where are you today?
I'm in southern Vermont in the Green Mountains. It is gorgeous out there. It is full-time spring. We have blue skies, flowers everywhere, flowering trees. It's just fantastic.
Is it a
Mm.
secret location, or is it a bunker, or is
It's always a secret location. No, I'm in southern Vermont. I'm in Manchester, and we're on a hill in the middle of this beautiful valley between the mountains, and it's just prana everywhere. And one of the mountains that we can see is known as Mount Aeolus.
mhm,
And Aeolus was the god of wind, the god of
mhm.
prana. And
Shocking?
so I see that, yeah, shocking, right? That I would land with a house that just looks in Mount Aeolus. And so I just get all that good prana vibe.
Now, not only are you amazing, I know you have a great support staff there. You've got the wonderful David. How's
I
he
sure
doing?
do. He's doing fantastic. Loving it. Loving life up here. Hiking. Soon we'll be swimming. It's still a little cold here. And doing lots of biking and getting into the woods as often as we possibly can.
Yeah, I remember when he first started this path, and wow,
Yeah.
like he dove in like twice.
Intense.
It's
We
funny,
love
he must
we,
have
we
got that
love it.
from you.
It's the karma, it's the karma of it. We each have our path to walk, to blaze, to fly through.
Yeah, the interplay of the souls is such a
Mm,
subtle, beautiful thing,
mm,
when we can just let go a little bit and trust. And,
mm,
David's just an amazing man and he's done so much with his
mm,
life, but God, his inner work. I haven't seen the man for years, but I can only imagine.
mm. It's something to be able to walk the path with someone who's so dedicated to it, and who inspires me and challenges me, and calls me out and keeps me moving and exploring, and that keeps it not only interesting but keeps me on my toes, which is really important too.
Yeah, me too. I live in the same neighborhood,
Hmm.
so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. The two of you, yeah, you're always at it, exploring, discovering, wrestling with the practices and how they show up in the different facets of life.
Yeah, it's great having that full mirror
Hmm.
all the time that you can't escape the truth from, even though
Hmm.
you wish you could from time to time. How's the dog?
The dog's good. He's upstairs. He was in here a few minutes ago, and I had to, scoot him out because he will take over the scene. He likes to toss the pillows behind me. He likes to toss those and get him moving. And so he loves it up here, except he prefers it to be cold. He definitely
Yeah,
likes the cold. So starting to
yeah,
slow down a little bit.
yeah.
Hmm.
So Ayurveda, gosh, what a rich, amazing tradition.
Mm,
This was science before science. It's
yeah.
just such an amazing thing. And gosh, you
Mm,
really dove all the way into the Ayurvedic pool, didn't you?
mm, I
What's your
definitely did.
journey been? I mean, from just initially just receiving the practices and then
Hmm.
deciding that you wanted to become the dean of Ayurveda at
Mm,
Colorado or at Kripalu, the largest
mm,
yoga center in America. It must have been
mm,
quite an interesting ride.
mm. I first met Ayurveda the same day that I showed up at Kripalu. Which was now 19 years ago. I've
Mm,
been at Kripalu for 18 years. And it was a
mm,
year before that. My mother had gotten me a gift certificate to get a massage there, and I'd never been on campus, never heard of the place. And I picked out what I thought was the most luscious thing on the menu, which was an Ayurvedic scrub down. It was an exfoliation massage followed by a stream of warm oil on the forehead. It's known as Udvartana Shirodhara,
mm,
and it's a detoxifying practice. It's perfect for, springtime,
mhm,
and also a very soothing, relaxing, sort of meditative practice. And when I arrived, the practitioner took my pulse and chose the oils based on my pulse. And that was all new to me. I'd never had my pulse taken in that way and didn't know anything about Ayurveda or the doshas, but I loved the treatment. And so I was in,
mhm,
like, as soon as those oils came out, they smelled so delicious and it felt so nourishing. Um, and so I loved it right from the start. And then a year later, I began working there and moving through my teacher training and such. And right away, I started uh, experimenting with Ayurveda. And so the Ayurveda school had just started when I arrived.
mhm,
And so I was able to meet the current dean, work with her, take lots and lots of Ayurvedic massages and consultations, get to know the students going through the school.
mhm,
And before long, I signed up to take the training as well, which was a 2-year academic, rigorous academic training. And from there, which also included a trip to India to study at a clinic there and to work with clients there. And then as soon as I finished up and graduated, I became the intern for the school. And I did that for a little while and then became the assistant dean and did that for a couple of years and then became the dean and held the dean position for a number of years. And now I'm faculty for them. So David and I moved out of the area, and so I had to let go of the dean position at that point. But I teach for them regularly. I'm going actually down to Kripalu tomorrow, as it so happens, to graduate the current class, and so it's been that's my academic journey.
mhm,
But my personal journey is uh, not as smooth. With
mhm,
Ayurveda, it really demands presence. It demands self-observation. It demands changing habits, and
mhm,
letting go of
mhm,
attachments. And so that's been more of a wrestling at times, and really identifying habits and patterns that I was attached to,
mhm.
and things that I was ready to let go of. Other things that I'm still attached to, like my morning cup of coffee, that I
Right.
really don't need, shouldn't have. And so it is a ride, much like the yoga path, which I've been exploring simultaneously, and the mindfulness practice, of course. I have my master's degree in mindfulness studies, and so working all three of those traditions, the yoga, the Ayurveda, and the mindfulness, from the Buddhist tradition, that has demanded that I really look at myself, look at what's working and what's not working, and make changes. And some of those changes, of course, have felt fantastic and really easy to make, and I've been super excited. And other things, as I'm sure you can imagine, not so easy, not so easy. And so it
Mm,
is a practice that um, like holds you to it. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, it's that.
Gosh,
Yeah.
when you said your mom sent you to Kapala and for a
Hmm.
massage, it just
Hmm.
reminds me of the folks out there that have that special mom. And that's not to degrade or be competitive or anything when it comes to moms, because all moms are coming from a place of growth. But gosh, when you have a mom that's like an all-star,
Hmm.
it's just something that you carry with you every step of the way. And you think about
Hmm.
the path that you've been on, and mom said, go down and get that massage. And you chose it. And so there was like a co-collaboration which led onto this path. Your mom must have been a piece of work.
Oh my goodness. And she's still alive now, and she is I will see her tomorrow, actually, as it so happens. She's 83 now and went through a period where, you know, it was really, really rough, really, really difficult, and then has bounced back and is doing really well. She studied philosophy. She was a
Mhm.
philosophy major in college, and she was a nurse, a visiting nurse, and she did a lot of caregiving, which is another big thing that I do. I'm an end of life doula, and actually
Mm.
right now in the midst of working with. One of my clients and friends just passed away 2 days ago, and I'm working with
Oh.
another client right now, and so there's a, you know, holding a lot of space, and I know that so much of that comes from her. You know,
Mhm.
that long-term interest in studying philosophy and different philosophies, and the ability to hold space for folks who are injured, sick, stressed, exhausted, depleted, bouncing back from surgeries, you know. So much of it comes
Mhm.
from her, and
Mhm.
my interest comes that way, even though she never encouraged me uh, in any way to do any of those things. And I also, you know, it's now been almost 20 years since my father passed away, but just with this last client that I've been working with these last few weeks, who's a dear friend of mine who's just passed, she her favorite texts were the Upanishads,
Mhm.
and so I have been bringing her books to read, reading from the Gita and reading from the Ramayana and the Tao, and bringing in Dana Fault's poetry, yoga
Mhm.
poetry, and things like that, and just filling the days with peacefulness and philosophy, which is what she requested for her end of life. And I brought in my copies, my volume of the Upanishads, and they were my father's.
Mm.
And I never knew that he studied them, and they were, you know, I found this out 20 years ago. My sister had given me his copies when she was clearing out his stuff, and I had no idea that he had studied yogic philosophy, and we'd never talked about it. He was a major in the classics. He taught Greek and
Mhm.
you know, philosophy and such, but we never talked about it. And so there's something about karma, lineage, ancestral work that
Mhm.
needs to be done that can come through even when one has passed away, even when it's never been a conversation. I really believe that there are threads that go from generation to
Mhm.
generation, that even without being spoken, there's still there's something gets put in the oven to be cooked, you know?
Right. Right. You know, it's amazing the generational trauma that we all are going through. You know, we never will be uh, healed. There's only healing. Someone said to
Mm,
me a couple of weeks ago, and it was just a
mm,
real eye opener. You know, that ing at the end,
mm,
not the ed, and it just kind of, I was like, wow, that's a really good one. I'm going to use that. Yeah, but you know, when I think of you,
mm,
my vision is someone who can dream big
mm,
and go for the goal, go for the gold, but also does not avoid the details of
mm,
what builds the quality of the mind and body to achieve such great human dreams.
mm.
Would that be a fair description?
I think so. Oh, you know, I don't think I really have my eye on the goal though so much. You
Right.
know, I'm more of a detail. I think I'm
I
more of
know
the
that.
work. I'm more of a worker bee, you know,
Yeah.
and I like to manage. I like to be in charge. I like to get things done. But I'm not actually so much the big visionary. You know,
Hmm.
it's almost always better for me to have someone who comes up with a fantastic idea and then
Hmm.
gives it to me, and I'm like, oh, I can do that. I can make that happen. But coming up with the big idea, that doesn't come up for me. You know, we all have different gifts in that way. But yeah, getting into the nitty gritty and like doing the work and making sure that everything is prepared properly. That's my wheelhouse right there.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the gifts of pitta. And
Yes.
you know, one of the great parts about Ayurveda is it accepts you as you are without
Mm,
judgment. And
mhm,
the great science leads us into classically three different mind body types. And there's different seasons and there's different pranayams, and
Mhm.
gosh, it just allows you to love yourself so much from the inside out if you can just surrender to it. And here we are in this beautiful spring. It's the curiosity of the new light, the new warmth, the sounds outside the window that we
Mhm.
hear every day. What's Ayurveda have to say about the season of spring and humanity?
Mhm. So spring is the season of birth, the season of new life. And so Ayurveda sees kind of all of life as going through three seasons. And this is not uncommon in the Western view as well. Um, and so spring is the youth of life. And so we all go through youth, and that is the time of growing, and it's a season that's often described as being very sticky. It's like the
Hmm.
mud season, right? Like
Yeah.
it's Cuppa Dosha is an energy that is said to be made mostly of water and earth. So it's like mud or like muddy water. So it's steady and sticky and gooey and wet and like just like babies, like
Hmm.
they're little gooey balls, and nourishment sticks to them and they grow and get bigger and bigger. And so we all go through this Kapha spring of life, Kapha season of life, which is then moved into the Pitta season of life, which is basically puberty to menopause, roughly ish,
Hmm.
teens, 20-ish to 50s-ish, and both for men and for women.
Hmm.
And that season of like needing fire to get things done and, build a career, build a family, perhaps, build a
Hmm.
bank account, maybe build a home, but to get things done. And we need that fire, that summer of life. And then we move into the vata stage, which is the winter of life, right?
Hmm.
And so that's the wisdom years of life and the time of really getting expansive and digging into the subtlety of spirituality. And so right now we're in spring. And and so we have externally in the macrocosm of nature, we have certain qualities that are showing up right now that are starting to shift towards summertime.
Hmm.
We're towards the end of the season, but springtime is often foggy, it's damp, it's cloudy. The earth itself seems kind of swollen with water,
Hmm.
especially in early spring,
Hmm.
like there's
Yeah.
flood, there's puddles, and we get a lot of of this wetness, kind of cool wetness,
Hmm.
dampness in spring. And that can accumulate in the body for
Hmm.
everyone
Hmm.
because we're affected by the weather. And so as it's cool and damp outside, we can tend to feel kind of cool and damp inside as well. And what often happens is we get too much of that like foggy raininess in the body and feel uh, extra congestion, like
Hmm.
sinus congestion,
Hmm.
runny nose, watery eyes, sneezing, seasonal allergies, lung congestion, feeling swollen or puffy, when rings don't fit well or
Hmm.
feet feel swollen, holding extra weight from the winter, like that.
Hmm.
It sort of all like comes to a head in
Right.
spring,
Right.
and we can feel that extra kapha or too much spring energy, too much spring qualities in the body mind. In the mind, we can see things like foggy headedness or lack of motivation or feeling sloth and torpor,
Hmm.
uh, feeling stuck in the mud, you know.
Hmm.
And so we talked last year here about some of the fun things for spring, and Ayurveda loves using pranayama to
Hmm.
balance what's happening in the season and in the weather and in our bodies. And so springtime, it's been, hopefully everyone watching has been like doing the stuff, like this is the time of year to be doing Bastrika and Kapalabhati and Ujjayi and like really getting things moving. Yeah, we need to balance all that heavy, wet spring energy with circulation and heat, basically, to dry up the extra water, to evaporate the mucus, to clear out the clogs. It's like pranayama is like it's like environmentally free Drano, for the
Right.
body. Like we
Right.
use the prana to just like clear things out. And so that's what we've been doing. That's ideal in the spring is like do the detox, do the purification, clear out the channels, strong pranayama, strong asana, lots and lots of work. It's time to detox. But
That's
we're
so,
we're coming to the end of that.
what's really interesting about Ayurveda, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that as we move through the seasons, before Ayurveda is going to allow you to spring into summer, you first must detox the inner world of the previous season.
Hmm.
Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
I just think like so much of, life seems to be moving forward, and I get that. But at the end of the day, Ayurveda also wants to pull the weeds from the last season before we
Hmm.
reach into the bounty of what the next season might offer us. And I just think that really honors the body and how hard it works for us. Let's just say now in winter to
Hmm.
keep us warm, to keep our temperature at 98.6, to stay grounded during difficult weather conditions and things like
Hmm.
that. Can you speak a little bit about how it all connects?
Yeah, yeah. So we see, the changing weather patterns throughout the year, and of
Mhm.
course, no matter where one is on the planet, there are different seasons. Of course, they're more dramatic at the poles and less dramatic at the equator, but
Mhm.
everybody has changing seasons.
Right.
And here in Vermont, they're very clear. Four very clear seasons. But Ayurveda pays a lot of attention to those changing seasons and the corresponding seasonal harvest.
Mhm.
And so we see that the earth gives us the antidote to the changing weather.
Mhm.
And what's growing right now in the spring garden is really different than what was growing in the fall harvest.
Right.
Like we
Mhm.
were getting all of these heavy, thick foods to prepare for the cold, windy, dry season of winter,
Mhm.
right? And so, like pumpkins, squash, nuts were falling from the trees. They're protein rich and high fat, right?
Mhm.
And we get wheat is traditionally harvested in the fall, which is a very sticky grain for the
Right.
cold, dry vata season. More dairy products used and more meat used in the fall and winter as well, like dense, thick comfort foods essentially. But the
Mhm.
garden itself gives us these rich, heavy root vegetables and really sticky grains and really dense nuts in the fall. We're not getting that stuff in the garden right now. It's a
Mhm.
different season. It's a
Right.
totally different harvest. And so in the spring, in this Cuppa season, when it's damp and cool and we need to detox, then the earth is giving us greens, basically bitter greens. That's all that's coming up out of the garden right now. It's
Mhm.
dandelion greens, mustard greens. Here in Vermont and in Massachusetts, we get a lot of fiddleheads, which are these green little bitter kind of ferns. We get asparagus and Swiss chard and broccoli rub and
Mhm.
celery and all the kales and stuff. Like pretty much every green vegetable is popping up right
Mhm.
now, except lettuce, which is more cooling for summer.
Mhm.
And so we get all of these like scraping. They're purifying. They're not high in fat. They're not heavy and dense. They're very light and they're rough and they scrape. And so the earth is giving us foods to detox, right? It's giving us foods to use to detox right now. And so everybody watching, like, eat your greens right now. It's as
Mhm.
many greens as you can get in, green soups and green juices and roasted greens and steamed greens and grilled greens, as much as you can. That's what the earth is saying to do now. And then in just a month or two, that harvest is also going to change. And as the weather moves away from this kind of cool, damp, foggy, muddy, rainy season, we're going to get into the hot,
Mhm.
humid summer season of pitta. And so the garden is going to give us all sorts of sweet fruits, right? And very juicy lettuce, very watery, very cold kinds of vegetables like cucumbers,
Mhm.
right? And so we're going to get a very different harvest, which is the earth, Mother Nature's wisdom, just giving us different foods at different times of year to handle what's happening in the weather. And
Yeah.
so we get, all the cucumbers and all of these sweet fruits like plums and watermelons and things like that to take us through the summer season. And
Mhm.
so Ayurveda would say, just like we change our clothes based on the season, we should change the yoga based on the season. We should change the diet based on the season because we can't do the same thing all year. The body has to be negotiating what's actually happening in the present moment.
Right.
So it's present, it's really mindfulness, it's mindful awareness of how our bodies and minds are affected by these changing seasonal patterns and weather patterns.
Amazing. Amazing.
Hmm.
Thank you for that. That is just beautiful.
Mm.
Ayurveda forces us or gives us the opportunity to participate in our well-being. Uh, it's not a pill. Uh,
Mm.
it's coming from the earth. Your body knows, your digestion knows what's coming from the earth.
Mm.
There's almost your body saying, hooray, something for
Hmm.
me, when it sees some of the nutritious items that you mentioned a few minutes
Mm.
ago that
Mm.
some of us might not be putting in our basket at the
Mm.
store.
Hmm.
How do we
Hmm.
get people to start to buy in that there is really no wiggle room here?
Mm.
This is the path that has been walked for thousands of years
Mm.
for folks that want to have energy, a clear mind, to be grounded, to
Mm.
remove toxic emotions, to
Mm.
understand the bigger purpose of our birth and why we're walking this path right now.
Mm.
What would you say to someone who's coming into a consultation who knew nothing about Ayurveda and wasn't getting full traction in their mind and was in adrenal fatigue and can't sleep at night and blah blah
Mm.
blah?
Well, when the situation is complex or complicated,
Hmm.
the remedy is to simplify.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that.
And that's what's happening. So for so many people nowadays, there's so much on the plate, like
Hmm.
on the dinner plate, so much on one's, schedule, so much to handle and navigate. And so people are facing uh, really difficult times and juggling a lot. And now, of course, being sandwiched, and I'm sure many of the listeners today are in kind of those sandwich years, like having kids who are growing up and then aging parents and juggling with work and animals and all the things. And so we see folks they're spread too thin, they're exhausted, depleted, sleep deprived, dehydrated, often with some kind of malnourishment, you
Hmm.
know, um, lots of toxicity, an accumulation of toxins over years and decades that needs to be cleared out. And then a mind that often isn't given enough time to let off steam,
Hmm.
and to process and to
Hmm.
digest. And so for all of those conditions, the remedy is to simplify, which is simple and safe and cheap, but not easy, like it's
Right.
not always easy, but it is absolutely the remedy. And so we need to simplify the diet. And the beautiful thing there, Ed, is that eating Ayurvedically is good on the wallet because whatever is in
Mhm.
season is cheaper because it's in abundance. And so,
Thank
when
you.
right, you go into a grocery store and whatever, like right now in the grocery store, there's asparagus like right in your face when you walk in,
Mhm.
like everything that is seasonal is on sale and it's right there in our faces. And so to follow those signs, like the farmers are giving us the antidote. It's right there. And it gives variety to try something different each season, not to be eating the same things season after season, which gets kind of boring on the tongue.
Right.
So we want to change things up. And then we need to simplify lifestyle, you know, getting rid of things that aren't necessary in the schedule, saying no sometimes, and
Yeah.
creating more space. Often what happens is kind of a friction, you know.
Mhm.
People are just jamming from one intense responsibility to the next thing, to the next responsibility, to the next thing, and it's creating systemic inflammation. There's this inner friction, there's this inner heat. It's just building, it's the like pressure, a pressure cooker.
Mhm.
And so folks are feeling that in the blood, they're feeling it in the heart, they're feeling it in the mind, the eyes burning. And so to slow down, to create more space, to take time off, to have silent meals, to drive in a car and not put music on when driving, to come home and not put the TV on all the time, or to watch something that's soothing and not disturbing, to the mind. Like there's so many little choices that can be made to simplify. And in Ayurvedic consultation is really helpful for that because clinicians can help sort of ask the right questions and identify what would serve, what would be a priority, what will be most effective and efficient for each client. That'll be different for everyone, but it's almost always about prioritizing peacefulness, nature time, quiet time, more time on the yoga mat, more time on the meditation cushion, more time, at the farmer's market, more time staring at the stars, you know. And these are all doable, very, very, very effective. And then, of course, we can Ayurvedically get into herbs and teas and spices and all sorts of other practices, that are a little more kind of surgical and get at the problem more directly. But we want to create a foundation, a lifestyle, the lifestyle, right? I want to create a lifestyle that is peaceful and tranquil, even when there's going to be ongoing demands and ongoing responsibilities. There are always things that can be simplified.
So well said. So clear and easy to
Yeah.
understand. Your communication's beautiful. In the West, we hear a lot about chronic inflammation and how it
Mm-hmm.
interferes with the distribution of oxygen to keep our energy
Mm-hmm.
levels high and keep us in rhythm. And Ayurveda, I believe, called that ama. And when we think
Sometimes.
about the brain, we have the West calls it neuropeptides,
Mm-hmm.
where in the East we would call it samaskara,
Mm-hmm.
subconscious habits, things like that. Uh, can you explain a little bit about how the season of spring and different types of breathing exercises would weave seamlessly into balancing out high levels of ama and then breaking maybe some of the subconscious habits that we hold so dear in our springtime memory?
Mm-hmm. So there are a couple things going on there, Ed, and Ayurveda, of course, it's an entire system of medicine. It's a
Right.
full, complete, sophisticated, vast system of medicine. And so um, it goes thoroughly into etiology and pathology of disease states, and it covers psychology and surgery and all sorts of things. And so um, when there is disturbance in the body, there are many things that can be at play.
Hmm.
Um, the doshas are almost always causing trouble. They're like the
Hmm.
Three Stooges. They're almost always causing some kind of trouble. And so, yeah, the word dosha literally means that which can spoil or that which can vitiate. It means at fault. And so they're not bad, but they have a tendency to spoil because they're affected by our diet and lifestyle choices. And because we have free will, we don't always make choices that are,
Right, right.
ideal for our bodies. And so the doshas they're naughty. And so the doshas are often responsible for the buildup of toxicity,
Hmm.
but they build up toxicity in different ways. So the word ama that you used before is a really interesting word in Ayurveda. It means, toxicity. It means toxic sludge or undigested food sludge.
Hmm.
That's more the technical term, really.
Hmm.
It's like undigested gunk, that's clogging up the channels.
Hmm.
And we see it for those who are really new to Ayurveda and watching, listening today. The ama shows up, it can show up anywhere in the body, and it can also clog the mind as well. And so there's kind of a subtle way of that ama can bring toxins into the
Hmm.
mind, but mainly we talk about it in the body. And so it can show up as like that white stuff that collects on the tongue in the morning.
Hmm.
So those of you who do like tongue scraping, if you look at your tongue in the morning, often there's like a little bit of white on the tongue. And that's pretty normal. It shows that maybe you want to lighten up the diet a little bit this day and just be a little cleaner in the food. But for some people, the tongue is just coated in white, like it's like a thick, almost like hairy, gooky white mess on the tongue. And the tongue is the beginning of the digestive tract.
Hmm.
And the tongue is also like a map of the internal organs. And in Ayurveda and diagnosis and assessment, we can read the tongue and see what's happening in each organ, each system of the body just by looking at the tongue. We can do
Hmm.
the same with the eyes, we can do the same with the pulse. And so it's an assessment tool. And so if the tongue is covered with that like white guck, you know for sure that ama on the tongue is also in the GI tract.
Hmm.
And so it happens a lot in the spring. A lot of people notice more white gook, more ama in the spring, because wintertime we tend to eat the heavier, richer comfort foods through the
Hmm.
vata season. It's like holidays and pies and meat and dairy and things like that. And that's appropriate for winter. But if it's not well processed, it will accumulate and cause clogging, causes basically a traffic jam in the body. And so it shows up as that white gook on the tongue, but it's also in the GI tract. It can create a foul smell, like when the
Hmm.
bowel movement smells. It can create bad breath smell, body odor. Like instead of just normal, like, get a good sweat and have a little kind of normal BO, it's like stinks,
Right.
that's a sign that
Pneumonia.
there's ama there. Yeah, it's like, um, and it can also create headaches. It can create a lot of achiness in the joints. It can create a lot of gas and a lot of like foul smelling gas. So those are some common signs of ama in the body, toxicity in the body. Now that ama can come with inflammation,
Hmm.
but technically they're separate. So there's
Really?
yeah, they're separate. So there's white ama and then there's inflammation.
Hmm.
And so, and inflammation is pitta. It's the
Hmm.
fire dosha.
Hmm.
And there can be pitta ama. So you
Hmm.
get inflammation plus the gook, right?
Hmm.
And it often turns yellow for pitta. So we get this yellowy gook instead of white gook.
Hmm.
And then we can have vata ama, and which tends to go more brown, and it's like darker on the tongue.
Hmm.
And so it's got a little bit different color. And then kapha ama,
Hmm.
which is just straight up white on the tongue, which is probably what a lot of people are feeling right now. But so the inflammation itself is pitta.
Hmm.
That's pitta. Pitta is the only fire dosha. And so when we get inflammation, it's happening because of pitta dosha. And so when there's toxicity plus inflammation, that's a challenging brew right there. That's a challenging brew. That's a complex situation. And so
Hmm.
we have to simplify. And so the beautiful thing about spring is that the earth is giving us detoxifying and refreshing, cooling foods.
Mm.
So we're getting all those bitter greens like asparagus and stuff. That's great for detox, but it's also cooling to inflammation. It's not like eating chili peppers,
Right.
We're not eating things that are going to inflame. We're eating things that are also refreshing. And so, I mean, think about loads of spinach and celery juice, right? Like green, very detoxing, incredibly cooling for inflammation.
Hmm.
And so the earth is, again, the earth's wisdom, Mother Nature's wisdom, the wisdom of Ayurveda, the wisdom of nature is giving us the antidote to both the toxicity and to the inflammation. But the main thing with inflammation is we have to take away the poisons. And they talk about them as poisons in Ayurveda, like what's causing the inflammation, what's causing the trouble.
Hmm.
And there are a lot of things that could be. One common reason for inflammation is the jamming of life, just going from one thing to the next that we
Right.
talked about before. And there's no
Right.
breathing room, right? It's creating a pressure cooker. And so it's like the stress of the sympathetic nervous system and the adrenals, and cortisol, the adrenaline just pumping through the
Hmm.
system all day, jacked up, revved up, and that's inflaming to the system. So it's like pitta behavior that
Hmm.
causes the inflammation. Another major cause of inflammation are foods and substances that are really hot or sharp.
Hmm.
And so alcohol,
Hmm.
coffee,
Hmm.
white sugar, greasy fried food, anything that's really peppery, ginger and garlic and eggplant parmesans and all the nightshades and sour foods and things like that. They're not good or bad. Ayurveda doesn't say that they're right or wrong. They're not good or bad, but they are inflaming or
Hmm.
they are heating. And so if we take in too much, it will stack and it will overflow and cause suffering. And
Hmm.
so right now we're right at that shift of kind of the cool season moving into the warm season. And so right now is the time to be extra careful of that inflammation because we've been eating sort of warm, hot foods all winter, right? And lots of cinnamon and ginger and spices, right? And it in the Cuppa season of spring, we also tend to do a lot, of talking at the very beginning of our session of like Bastrika and Kapalabhati and like
Mm-hmm.
Vinyasa, like now's the time to detox and like get in the sauna and cook out those toxins. But we have to be careful right now because the next month or two is when the temperature starts to rise and the body will start to
Mm-hmm.
feel overly heated.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to reduce the coffee, the alcohol, the hot, spicy food, the greasy food that's all very heating, and then also create more spaciousness in life, like taking vacations in the summer, and not jam packing them with 1,000 things, like actually taking quiet time to gaze at the stars, to sit out on the deck, to have a quiet picnic. It's time to actually let the body air out. And we do this also with the yoga and also with the pranayama. Like it's time to start shifting away from the really hot things and the purifying practices of spring and be just a little extra careful of the inflammation that can accumulate and be aggravated in this coming season of summer.
Thank you for that. Not only are you extremely skilled in Ayurveda, but you're also an American pranayama master.
It's my favorite thing of all.
If you haven't passed out, you haven't done enough. So just say that I was coming to see you and I was a kapha persona, a Cuppa persona. And here we are in mid-May. What pranayams would you be suggesting to a Cuppa persona at this time of year?
I would be starting to I would be doing some gentle, so a Cuppa, someone who has a lot of Cuppa in their system,
Yeah,
who's like born with that, they're going to be pretty sturdy folks. So Cuppa
yeah.
Dosha, it's made of water and earth. It's the most stable of the three doshas. It's the strongest of the three doshas. It has the best endurance of the three doshas. Like they're the powerhouse dosha. And so folks who have a lot of Kapha in their makeup, they're sturdy. Like they tend to have broad shoulders, they have strong muscles, the big rib cage, big skeletal system, big
Yeah.
lungs, like they're, booming voices, right? And so they can take a lot. Yeah, they can take a workout, like they can take a workout. And so and Kapha dosha's main location for everyone. So we all have Kapha dosha. We all have Kapha dosha uh, in our bodies and minds, giving us all sorts of kind of cool lubricants. It's like the inner spring wetness. So
Mm-hmm.
the saliva in the mouth is governed by kapha, and the mucosa that lines the lungs,
Mm-hmm.
protecting the lungs from all that dry vata breathing all day, including the pranayama.
Mm-hmm.
The mucosa that lines the stomach, protecting the stomach from all those hot pitta acids that break down food, right? Kapha dosha governs the synovial fluid and the cerebrospinal fluid and the white matter of the brain. So we all have Kapha dosha. Everybody has it, but some people have like a lot of it. They're born with a Kapha constitution, and those are like the really sturdy folks. And so for them, I would be giving them in the Kapha season the strongest of the pranayamas. And so, because the main location of kapha in the body is actually the lungs, that's its primary organ.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and this is where accumulation of mucus shows up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to clear the lungs, and pranayama, the fastest way to do that. And so for a kapha dosha, lots of sun breaths, working the arms up, breath of joy, right? We want to get moving. We want to heat and circulate. I said earlier, like heat and circulate.
Yeah.
And so sun breaths, breath of joy are fantastic in the kapha season. For a Cuppa dosha in the Cuppa season, I would definitely be doing Bastrika, pumping the
Mm-hmm.
arms, working
Mm-hmm.
those lungs,
Mm-hmm.
airing them out, working the bellows, like get into all those little nooks and crannies and clear out the clutter. Again, it's
Yeah.
like pranayama's like Drano, you just get in there and get it out. I would be doing Kapalabhati, right? Kapalabhati, that which is like using a neti pot, right? It clears mucus out of the sinuses and
Mm-hmm.
clears the frogs in the throat.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of that stuff. But I would start to actually be tapering it down over the next month and sort of rounding off or softening the edges of that practice in May and June so that it's not so booming, it's not so big, it's not so heating, because now's the time where it could backfire.
Yeah, you're
Like
not going to need it.
you're not going to need it. Exactly. So like March, April, May, That's the time of year, I would argue, for everyone, no matter what the constitution, do the strongest pranayama in the spring, early spring,
Hmm.
even February, March, April, May. That's the time to do the strongest pranayamas of the year for
Hmm.
everybody,
Hmm.
especially for a Cuppa constitution. And especially for folks who are working with extra congestion and seasonal allergies and runny nose and all that stuff, like do the pranayama, it will help. It will really help. But now we need to start
Hmm.
taking it down a notch, or else it will accumulate too much heat. And when you get into summer, folks will be dried out, overly dried. They'll be overly hot. And so we want to just kind of smooth off the edges of that practice a little bit. And so I might move more to just sun breaths instead of lots of bastrika, so that we
Hmm.
get the movement of the arms, we get the movement of the breath, but it's more fluid, it's
Hmm.
more tranquil, it's more peaceful, you know. Um, it's very much this time of year is a time to go from the doing, like
Hmm.
strong vinyasa and like doing the arm work and arm balancing and inversions and like clearing, like draining out the lungs that we do in the spring. And we want to start moving from doing into being.
Hmm.
And the summer is very much a time, Ayurvedically, yogically, to be more spacious. And space is an element that is needed for both the spring Kapha season, because Kapha is made of water and earth. It has no space, so we want to have a lot of spaciousness for spring. But space is also needed in summer for pitta,
Hmm.
which is made of water and fire. So it also is missing space. And so we can use the spaciousness of practice for both the spring and the summer season. And that's kind of the dovetailing element, of having space. And so what that means is like reaching, stretching, lengthening, getting wide, like
Hmm.
elongating, taking long, deep, thorough breaths, both the
Hmm.
inhalation and the exhalation, getting good exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, pranifying all the channels thoroughly. But in the spring, we do that a little faster,
Hmm.
we have a
Hmm.
pep to it. And
Yeah.
in the summer, we do a little more slowly so we don't overheat, because wind fans fire. So if the breath is too fast in the summer, it's fanning that inflammation, it's fanning that pitta, it'll fan the fire. And so we just want to slow it down a little bit more and let everything get a little bit more quiet as we move into summer. And there are a lot of ways to do that.
Yeah. And space creates quiet. Uh, so, regardless of dosha type, springtime is when we want to kick it up.
Springtime's when we can kick it up, absolutely.
But
And
if you're
the
kapha, kick
dosha,
it up the most.
kick it up the most.
Right.
And the time of day is important too, Ed, because
Ah.
just like spring season is like the birth of life, and then youth is the spring of life, the morning is the Kapha time of day, the
Mm.
the the, the beginning of the season. And so early morning is the best time of day to be doing the strong pranayama and strong exercise, according to Ayurveda. And so, roughly sunrise through the morning while it's still cool out, while there's still dew and wetness on the grass and in the atmosphere. that's the time to like that's the time to do the bastrika. That's the time to do the kapalabhati.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't
Hmm.
know where I'd be in my life without pranayama, without yoga,
Yeah.
without you.
I'll
Yeah.
give everything up, but not pranayama.
Yeah, we're not going to give that up. It's just too damn much fun. I like something that can push my buttons and humble me on a regular
Hmm.
basis.
Hmm.
And, humility is something that I think is a very grounding thing. It keeps us growing, it keeps us curious. And,
Hmm.
a pranayama practice changed my life 25 years ago, and it still does it on a daily basis. And nothing's really changed. Every time when I sit down, it's still just the first time. And there's this little kid, curious, who wants to play with the energy and wants to push into
Hmm.
my mind and wants to say, why, or how, all the little things sometimes that gets lost in the hustle and bustle of
Hmm.
success or whatever you're going for. It's so
Hmm.
cool.
It's so cool. And with that, it's so important to be shifting the yoga and the pranayama practice, just like the diet and the clothes based on the season. And there are a lot of things that I think practitioner like new practitioners may not know. and seasoned practitioners may have forgotten, which is like in the yoga space or in the meditation space or the pranayama space, we can bring a lot of juice to
Hmm.
practice in the environment,
Hmm.
in the environment of the space, like right behind me, this is my yoga space, I can
Yeah.
practice right here, and I've got a huge door looking out in Vermont and big window looking out at the mountains.
Or we can see the
Um,
wind.
you can see them like, yeah. And so something that can be really helpful that can also change with the seasons, things like aromatherapy during practice. So like,
Hmm.
classically the yogis would burn incense during yoga practice, have sandalwood or frankincense, burning in the background, and that helps to create more of that vibe that creates spaciousness, right? To have aroma in the space. And that's something that can change in the season. Like right now in the spring, as we're kind of coming out of spring, aromas like eucalyptus
Hmm.
and the citrus aromas, lemon balm and
Beautiful.
orange and grapefruit, like just to have a little vial,
Hmm.
where before practice you can take a little whiff. And it's just such a quick way to awaken the mind, to open up the subtle channels. Aromatherapy is for the
Yeah.
prana body in so many ways. And so I shift up my aromas based on the season too, and like what I'm keeping near me during yoga and meditation practice and pranayama. And so I've been using a lot of those, like the eucalyptus. I have actually right here. This is always on my desk. This is like a little vial. It's called a neti stick. I'm not an ambassador or anything, but a neti stick. And it is basically like it's a little vial that's got a cotton swab inside and it's filled with eucalyptus and peppermint. And so you just get a little whiff. It's like ready for Costa Rica now, like it just right away it wakes you up and it brings brightness to the mind when the mind is foggy, when there's lack of motivation. And so for those out there who have trouble kind of getting started with their pranayama practice or their meditation practice, aromatherapy can be a really nice way of luring you to
Hmm.
the cushion. And so I use those stimulating ones in the spring, and then as we move into summer, then I change it to more cooling, refreshing aromas for the pitta summer season. And so this vial is actually rose, and I use
Hmm.
rose a lot. But mint is really good, lily, lotus, kind of all the sweet flowers. I even use again, I'm not an ambassador, this is what I use, but I have an a rose water, which is
Hmm.
just an essential, it's just distilled rose water. And I can just spritz it all over. It can go right in the eyes. There's no perfume, no dye. And it's like this beautiful moment of just cool, refreshing mist.
Yeah.
And I will often spritz myself between rounds of pranayama just to keep everything sweet and
You hear that,
spacious.
ladies
And,
and
you
gentlemen?
know,
Make a mental note of that.
mm-hmm,
Everybody wants a quick fix.
mm,
Guess what? As soon as you interact with those things that you just mentioned, your body immediately knows what that is. Whether you
mm.
mentally know what it is, really not important. Your body knows immediately, goes, whoo, I know what that is. I've done this for thousands of years. I'm in. So these are great little hacks to keep us interested, to keep us coming back, to keep us exploring, keep us curious, keep us young,
Mm,
looking forward to a better future. All these little things, it all just is part of the beautiful puzzle of us.
mm.
So what are we going to do with this spring and pranayama? How can we leave this with folks where they're just going to go get in their car and do 50 rounds of Pastrika and run every red light? No, I mean they're going to get excited about getting healthy again using pranayama.
Yeah, yeah. Stand up, like stand up and do some, we're so used to doing seated pranayama, and most of the pranayamas need to be done seated because you can get dizzy and pass out. We don't really want that. But so
Hands out.
like, yeah, so you want to, yeah, hands out. I was thinking today, I was taking a walk before getting on the call with you and thinking about one of the classes I was teaching way back, and I was teaching like a ton of intense pranayama and lots of kumbhak, lots of holding, and I just heard
Yeah.
thud, like somebody
Right.
hitting the floor.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, I gotta take it way back for these folks, trim it way back.
It,
Um,
it's funny when the light switch gets pulled out of the wall. You're like, oh my, well, I'm going down.
like we need soft rugs, we need
Right.
cushions all around. Like,
Rubber room.
yeah, look, I can fall anywhere in this room. No problem. It's real
It's
soft.
oh god, it's just it's part of the ride. Creating boundaries.
Yeah, testing one's edge, but
Yeah.
generally we don't want people passing out. And so the standing up, like this is a great time of year to do standing sun breaths, to do breath of joy. Do you want me to show the group,
I would
show
love
everyone?
that.
I'll stand
Thank
up
you
and do
so
them.
much.
Yeah. Let me just tie my shirt here. And so it's so simple. And these are like mini breaks that you can take at any time in the day when you just need to get prana flowing. And
Right.
can you see me okay?
Awesome.
I'm a little okay. Little shift my lights a little bit for you. All right. And let me just shift my camera a little for you so you can see me a little bit more
Where's
full
that? I
screen.
see a fire in the background. Oh, that's you.
It's a flame. And so for those who want to shift up the pranayama practice, you just come to standing, feet about shoulder width apart. So you have a good solid foundation. Inhale the arms out to the sides and up overhead. Exhale the hands down the center line. Inhale the arms out to the sides and overhead. Exhale down the center line. And you do several of these sun breaths with the ocean sounding breath,
Yes.
getting things moving, like opening up the shoulders, airing out the armpits, stretching open the side ribs, clearing the intercostal muscles between the ribs that tend to get really brittle, really tight, really rigid. So this helps to open that up. We're getting good exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, and you could slow it way down.
Mhm.
And then reverse direction. Inhale up the center line, exhale the arms out and down, but bend the knees. The fingers graze the thighs. And then inhale, legs straighten, arms reach. Exhale into a little squatting sun breath. And so that gets a little more circulation. We bring the legs into it. And for those who are feeling more limber, the hands can even graze the floor. So you get these big squatting sun breaths, full body circulation. This is going to
Yes.
get a little cardio, right? We're starting to
Yeah.
move things. And so that's going to circulate the plasma, the lymph, the blood, and the prana. And so squatting sun breaths or butterfly breaths, those are fantastic. So like
Mhm.
that can take a minute. That could be a minute break, getting up from the computer, doing a little breath work before walking into the office, taking a break between meetings, like
Mhm.
1 minute can boom, and then you spritz yourself with a little rose water and you're good to go,
I love it.
One more practice that's fantastic in standing is the breath of joy. Also super simple, a little bit more stimulating. So a little better for spring. You're really going to get things moving. 3 inhalations through the nose, 1 exhalation through the mouth. And so we inhale first, the arms go forward, fill the belly. Inhale a second time, arms go out to the sides, fill the side ribs. Inhale a third time, arms go up overhead, fill the collarbones with breath. On the exhalation, the knees bend and the arms swing back, and you let out a ha through the mouth. Okay,
Yeah.
so it looks like this. Ha, ha, and you just keep going. It's a 3-part inhalation and a 1-part exhalation. You can even let the corners of the mouth lift up a little bit here. It's the breath of joy. Think
That's
about something
right.
that you're grateful for, and that
Beautiful.
just gets things moving. You do a few rounds of that, shake it loose, and it's
Right.
like boom, instant prana circulation. It's so easy and a nice way to pep up and change up what's happening in spring. And actually, Cuppa Dosha is most supported by variety. So,
Right.
like, try an aromatherapy, do pranayama a different way, wear a different color, bring fresh flowers into your pranayama space,
Mhm.
eat some green vegetables that you haven't eaten in a year that are now on sale in the grocery store. Like having variety is so helpful for those samskaras that you mentioned, those habits, to break those habits. And that's what helps us to change the trajectory of health and wellness is just a small little change, a small little decision that brings more health and wellness. It's easy to do. It sets you up. It sets you
Mhm.
up for success.
Well, thank you so much for that pranayama experience. So many of the things that you just led just allow us to ignite the brain, kickstart the heart, activate gastric fire, strengthening the grounding rods of the legs. It was all right there. And you've got all four forms of self-care in the same second. You got your cardio. There was stretching. There was strengthening, body weight against gravity. And there was a meditative mind. You can't have more simplicity and efficiency than what we just saw presented to us the last minute or so. And you can see the vibrancy of the face. The face doesn't lie. You can feel the energy vibrating through there. And that vibration of fresh energy is simply key to being able to change habits. You know, when we're stressed and exhausted, we don't want to change habits. It's like we're stuck in these grooves and we can't get out. And Ayurveda forces subtle change 3 times a year. If you're a neuron in your brain, that's exactly what the doctor ordered. You know, we must change with the seasons. We must use the pranayama with the seasons. And all of this leads us to a more purposeful, driven life. How do people work with you, Larissa? How do folks get a hold of you and get some of your dynamic teachings?
Right on my website, larissacarlson.com. It's LARISSACARLSON, larissacarlson.com. You can also email me at larissa@larissacarlson.com and find me on Instagram. I'm on other platforms too, but that's my main one. So Instagram, my handle is at Larissa Hall Carlson. I do consultations for yoga, for mindfulness, for pranayama, but mainly one-on-one for Ayurvedic diet and lifestyle. So folks who are working with things like acid reflux, constipation, sleep trouble, inflammation, chronic headaches, you name it, Ayurveda covers it. And so reaching out to me for support right on my website, they can book sessions right there. I also travel and teach a lot, and so they can look at my event schedule. And I just released a brand new audio course called Ayurveda for Meditators. Ayurveda for Meditators. And it's just 2.5 hours, very short and to the point. So for folks who are new to Ayurveda and want to know more specifically about the seasons, the qualities, the locations of the doshas, the functions, how they show up in the body, mind, and then how to make reasonable, realistic, practical changes that are safe, simple, free, and effective. That's all right there in the course. And the course focuses on overcoming the 5 hindrances to meditation through dosha balancing. So I weave together my master's in mindfulness with my Ayurvedic practitioner and Ayurvedic yoga specialist training.
And that huge heart of yours, which is undeniable, just one of the most beautiful things on. I don't know what else to say other than the fact that on behalf of Harley and Wendy and everybody out there who's tuning in, we just say we love you. We're really, really proud of you. And you're continuing to produce healthy change in places where we thought change could never take place. Thank you so much for your service to humanity, Larissa.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Ed. You and Wendy keep on doing the goodness, spreading all that goodness, and I love you too so much. It's so nice to connect and see you here.
Man, I always learn when I'm around you, and it's just such a beautiful thing. And your delivery, your communication skills, it's so seamlessly easy to understand. So continue your greatness. We will connect again. Hugs and loves to everyone in your life, and I'll see you later.
Bye, everyone. Take good care.
Thank you.